Man, what a week it has been in MJ world. The movie, can you believe it? The movie has done something like $219 million in gross sales worldwide. First weekend, opening weekend. I think they're calling it the biggest biopic opening in history, which is amazing. Then this came out. So we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about the movie. We're going to do a little vinyl battle like we sometimes do. Tonight I've got, it's summertime here in Orlando, so I've got a beautiful glass of Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand. So I'm going to be sipping on that. We're going to be talking about Michael. We're going to be talking about the Michael movie, the Michael album. And then I've got kind of some questions I'm going to throw at you guys. So hang out with us, get a glass or a can of your favorite beverage, and come hang out in the studio for a little bit. My name is Brad Sundberg. Welcome. What a week. I've seen the movie twice now. I think I told you that. I haven't had a chance to go see it a third time. I plan on it. I want to go see it again. But man, this thing just keeps pushing. It's only been 1 week. We're coming up on its second weekend of global release. Or no, it's not out around the world yet. I know it's in the US, Europe. I don't think it's out in Japan yet. So I don't know anything about anything, but I do know Michael fans, and I do think this thing is going to be chugging along for a little while. So we're going to be talking about the movie and some comments that we had from our podcast last week. But I want to start out with something a little different. I've done this a few times, what I call kind of the vinyl battle. The Michael album, I guess you'd call it the Michael soundtrack album, came out. And my buddy Jared was with me last week talking about the movie. And Jared is a dyed-in-the-wool, old-school MJ fan. Jared has an amazing album collection and 45s, and that's his thing, is vinyl. You have to understand, Jared and I have been friends for years, and we were both excited about seeing the movie. Jared and I hang out as much as we can, and we're just, to quote Michael and Stevie Wonder, just good friends. We're just good friends, and so we were both excited about the movie, and it was fun to hang out with them. I got. Jared's probably going to pop in once in a while. We have a good time together, and I think it's fun having him here. So I think it was several days ago, Jared brought this to me, a little gift. He brought me the Michael songs from the motion picture, the Michael album. Of course, these are Michael songs. Jafar didn't redo them or anything. So I thought it might be fun. Well, here, let me just show you. It's a pretty cool little album. And a couple little side notes. I've been out of the recording industry. Don't hate me, but I've been out of it since about 1996, 1995, 1996. I mean, the History album was the last project that I was actively involved in. I worked on Blood a little bit, but History was really my last one. And I really started, my second career of building music systems, and Michael was kind of my biggest client for a long, long time. So I did all the music systems at Neverland. I did tons of video shoots with Michael and different artists. I had equipment that I built, I designed, I rented. And so I kind of left the recording side of the business around 1995. It doesn't seem that long ago, but I guess the calendar doesn't lie. It's about 31 years ago. So it's kind of funny. Right there on the floor, yes, it's on the floor, my Grammy membership. I never won a Grammy, but I'm a voting member of the Grammys, which is still kind of a cool little thing. So since 1995, I really haven't gotten any album credits until this. And here I got credited. You can look it up, but boom, there I am. So on the song Bad, it's probably not in focus and it's too small anyway, but I believe it's an assistant engineering credit on an album released in 2026. So that's pretty cool. If it goes platinum, I might go ahead and order a platinum album and hang it on my wall, and that's cool. So I'm very grateful to to the executive producers, John Branca and John McClane, for including me in the liner notes and giving me an engineering credit, which is kind of cool. So much appreciated. Okay, the other thing I was going to show you, and I actually think this is pretty cool. It's a 2-record set, as it should be, and check it out. Brace yourself. They're clear, which is kind of fun, kind of different. I haven't seen a clear vinyl in a long time. So nice job on that. Kind of unique, kind of different. So they're clear. So the first thing that came into my mind was, how do they sound? Because at the end of the day, I love novelties. I've got a bunch of the picture discs, and they get a little bit silly sometimes. They sound just awful. So I thought, how does it sound? So right here, this is my little production room that we're sitting in. I know you can't see it, but over there, that's my original Technics SL1200 turntable. I bought that in 1994 specifically for the History album. I did a lot of the vinyl test pressings on that exact turntable. I've gone through several cartridges. I do take good care of it. So I have my SL1200. Then I have my Cali speakers, which they're a good. I'm used to them. They're a good studio monitor, just to kind of get an idea of how a record really sounds, and I've got them pretty dialed in. So I like how they sound in this room. So I thought, well, here we go. Let's go ahead and let's play ball and see how the Michael soundtrack. I chose 2 songs. I went kind of old school. The first one that I did was Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. Boom, off the wall. Look at him. Good looking little dude. Jared Bradshaw stood right against that wall. We were in LA a couple of years ago, and I took a picture of Jared right there. But what a great record. This was Quincy's first. Technically, this was Quincy's second record with Michael, if you include The Wiz. So The Wiz was kind of when the two of them really gelled. And then Quincy signed on to do Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad. So this was the first one where it was really Michael, Quincy, Bruce, Rod Temperton. This is when the team really came together. So they did a song on here called Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. I don't want to talk about bottles. I don't want to talk about who played the bottles. I got myself into hot water about that a few weeks ago. I'm not going to go there. I will say that the way Bruce recorded the bottles was perfection. So what I did was, if you haven't been with me for a while or you don't know what I'm talking about, what I like to do is take 2 vinyls and the original, which should sound the way that Bruce and Bernie Grundman wanted to sound back when it was released, and then the re-release, and just do kind of a side-by-side comparison. And that's what I did. So I chose 2 songs that from 2 different eras of Michael. The first one I did was Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. So I played, I'm going to call it the OG. I played the OG, and this is not a re-release. This is one of the original releases from that era. I dropped it on my Techniques. Now, when I do comparisons, I do not touch the volume control. I leave it exactly the same, and I go back and forth, and I kind of do what you might call critical listening between those 2 products, between those 2 albums. And it's pretty amazing, the differences that you can hear. So and I'm sorry, I'm going to get techie on you just for a couple minutes, and then we're going to get into a little more of the reactions of the Michael movie. But let's get through some of the techie stuff first. And what a concept. I actually took notes. So on the OG, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, these are my gut reactions to listening to it on my turntable, on my setup. I said the shaker on the left side is absolutely crystal clear. Now, when Bruce used to mix a song, and I have to do this from your perspective because I'm sitting here looking at a camera, when we use the stereo spectrum, in other words, from your far left to your far right, well, that's my left and my right. For you, it's the other way around. We would do almost like the hands on a clock. You know what I mean? It's like I'm sitting at the 6 o'clock position and I'm looking at you at the 12 o'clock position. Well, we do that with our panning, with where we place the instruments. So from your perspective, that shaker that I'm talking about at the beginning of Don't Stop Till You Get Enough lands right about at 11 o'clock, like right here. And boom, I mean, it's there, it's clear as a bell. And that's the first thing I notice, is it's just, that's what I wrote. The shaker on the left is crystal clear. Then the bass hits. The bass was just amazingly clear. Bruce used to have this thing, it was this special direct box. It was this giant transformer enclosed in a box. And bass players like Louis Johnson would come in and plug into that thing. And the way that Bruce is able to capture and replicate the sound of a bass guitar just kind of set him apart from anybody else. So the bass was just, the words I used were solid and very well defined. The bass was just clear, boom, fat on the bottom. And then the kick drum. The kick drum, John Robinson, of course, played drums on this. And the drums are just, the kick drum is just a Bruce Swedien analog recorded acoustic kick drum. And it's just perfect. It's right where Bruce wanted it on this version. Okay? So, you know, I'm kind of grooving into the song. I'm listening to it. I'm listening to Michael's vocals. I'm listening to the placement of all the instruments. And even after all these years, even on, you know, a record that's been through numerous moves, it's been, you know, in and out of boxes, and it still sounds just pristine. And that's what I expected. It's a Bruce Swedien mixed Quincy Michael Rod song that then is mastered by Bernie Grundman. So it's gone through the process and it just sounds perfect. It sounds the way that it should have sounded the day they left the studio. So then I put up this one, which is the clear vinyl. And again, it's not Jafar, it's actually Michael. Now, the good news is I went into it with pretty low expectations, if I'm being honest. It's a little bit, just a teeny bit of a novelty because it's clear. And so, you know, whenever you're working with like a picture disc or something, they're going to sound pretty terrible. But so I went into it with very low expectations. And I got to say, I was surprised. I was actually surprised that it sounded as good as it did. I was like, wow, this actually doesn't sound terrible. I did make some notes. On the movie version, if you're still with me, on the movie soundtrack version of the vinyl, the first word I wrote, or the first phrase I wrote was, it's a bit restrained. What does that mean? It just felt like, and it actually surprised me a little bit because I thought it was going to be like just overly compressed and super bright. And it really didn't. It actually kind of felt a little bit pulled back. The phrase that I used was, it just seemed slightly shrouded. What does that mean? If you're listening to a pair of speakers, and by the way, get a pair of speakers. I know all you guys have your earbuds and your over ears and all that, but every now and then you got to just have a pair of speakers and just crank them up a little bit and really listen in a room. I love the acoustics of a room and listening to speakers. So in my mind, it was almost like I was listening to my speakers, but there was almost like a thin blanket in front of the speakers, and it was just holding back some of those high frequencies, not destroying it, but it just, it didn't sound like the OG. It was just a little bit restrained. And then the other thing I wrote was it just seems softer. It's almost like somebody turned the volume down a little bit, about 2-3 dB, and the drums were not nearly as crisp and as well defined as on good old Off the Wall. Now, they do credit Bernie Grundman with doing the mastering, and that may be. Bernie's got to be getting up in years, and I've seen an interview with him recently, and Bernie, if there's any chance in the world you see this, nothing but respect. I'm not putting you or your amazing facility down in the least, but it didn't have kind of anywhere near the same crispness as the original. Now, it could be that clear vinyl. That might be a lot of it. And I've also talked to you about where the song sits on the actual physical piece of vinyl. And I think Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, well, it's the second cut. So on Off the Wall, it's the first cut. So overall, it just seemed pulled back a little bit. So obviously, the OG won that battle, but it was actually closer than I would have expected. Then I decided to do Bad. The song, it's the final song in the movie. People had a lot of comments about that. You know, why was that? Why did we just kind of jump from Thriller to all of a sudden Michael performing Bad at Wembley Stadium? And I don't know. People kind of had one or two people kind of dissed on Sheryl Crow just a little bit. Don't do that. Sheryl was there. She was part of the Bad tour, and her giant hairsprayed hair and short skirt and the whole thing. I mean, that's part of the history of Michael. So Bad. We jumped on to, I decided let's go ahead and go with the big dog. So this is one of my original vinyl copies. You know how you can tell if it's a first release of the Bad album? Is if it has the whispering intro of I Just Can't Stop Loving You. You know, I just want to lay next to you for a while. That was the first pressing that we did of the Bad album, because after that, we cut it off. We might talk about that in a couple minutes. So there's nothing special about this other than it's a first release, and I try to take good care of my records. So I put this up on my Technics SL1200, took a sip of my my New Zealand wine, and I'm going to sound like a 13-year-old kid here, but the very first word I wrote when I was listening to the original Bad album was wow. It's just, number one, it's a throwback for me, but also it just sounds spectacular. What I wrote was, it's punchy. There's that oscillator, that tick, 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 that goes back and forth, back and forth. The oscillator is just crystal clear on the vinyl, and it's wide. It almost goes outside of the speakers. Really big, wide, crystal clear sound. Bruce's kick and snare. This was when he really started migrating into drum machines. And Bruce did his kick and snare on the old Akai MPC 60. And we recorded the drum sounds ourselves. They're real Bruce Swedien recorded drum sounds. I can talk about that for hours. And they are just right in your face. That kick drum is just solid and punchy. And the snare is right where it needs to be. The hi-hat is offset just a little bit. I think it's like at 11 o'clock. In the stereo field. And then the bow wow. Michael starts the bow wow. I think that's over for you. It'd probably be like 9 o'clock, something like that. And it's clear. It's Michael. I think Michael was talking into a little paper towel tube or something, doing the bow wow. And it floated out of my left speaker, and it was just fun to hear all those sounds again. And then once we got to the chorus, the vocals are clear and bright, and the horns are just perfect. So, as expected, it's a Bruce Swedien mix, Bernie Grundman master. The original Bad album just sounds amazing. That sets the mark. So then, I'm a good sport. I'm like, well, let's go ahead and put bad on here, which is on side D, cut 3, and it's not good. It just does not compete with the OG. The first words out of on my notes were that it's flat, it's soft. And then I'm like, where are the drums? You know, we worked so hard on those drums, and I don't think it's the same mix. I think it's a different mix. There's something just different about it. The bow wow is almost not there. The organ, for whatever reason, Jimmy Smith's on the organ, just there's a lot of organ, but the bow wow was gone. Now, this is the weird part. When I listen pretty intently. And I was sitting right in the sweet spot between my speakers. And I swear the whole thing is pulled to the right a little bit. Michael's vocal, it may not have been at 1 o'clock, but it was like at 12:30. I didn't get that. That should just be dead center, right down the middle, just right between your eyes. And it wasn't. It was pulling me to the right. In fact, I went back and forth and I tested it against this like 2-3 times just to make sure I wasn't going crazy. And I swear it's pulled to the right just a little bit. Now, the fact that, it's produced by a couple attorneys, John Branca and John McClain. No, I'm not going to get myself into trouble, but something's just off. I love the movie. Don't get me wrong. I'm just talking about the sonic quality of the record. Something was just off. And the road, I wrote here the vocal. Yeah, I wrote the vocal is at 1 o'clock, which again for you would be like right about here. So you listen to it, but something is off. I'm going to go ahead and buy the CD just because I got to make sure that I'm not going crazy. But those were my findings. I might do a couple other songs in the future. I really should do Human Nature. That's such a gorgeous song. At some point, maybe I'll do, I don't know, Billie Jean or Startin' Something or whatever. But anyway, that's what I came up with. So the OGs, I think, do sound quite a bit better. But this, it's a beautiful collector's piece, and yay, I got my name on it. So that's cool. I am curious for your thoughts about the Michael soundtrack album. So we had a fun podcast last week with me and Jared. I loved the comments. You guys were really amazing with the comments. I went through and I just highlighted a couple of them, and I thought I might just talk about them for a few seconds and maybe get your comments, your feedback on them. So Trevo said he wanted to know the difference between the original Bad album and some of Michael's later album. No. The differences between the various versions of the Bad album. And I've talked about this in my live events a few times. I don't know if I've really talked about it on a podcast. It's not a terribly complicated story, but let me try and tell it to you in a quick and concise manner. When Bruce mixed the Bad album, the whole project took about 8 months, something like that. And I was one of the assistant engineers. And that's really when I already knew Michael really well, but this is when I really kind of gelled with the team. When we were mixing the album, it's a whole thing. Quincy is there, Bruce is there, Bruce is mixing. Rod Temperton is there, Michael is there, Bill Bray is there. Miko would be in and out. Craig Johnson was the technical director on the project. Once we were done, we delivered the album, went to Bernie's, mastered it, and boom, it's in production. Then you probably know the story. I Just Can't Stop Loving You was the first single, and the DJs in the U.S. did not like the whispery intro. I just want to lay next to you for a while. So Bruce, by then, we're pretty much done. Everyone's scattered. Craig, who was Bruce's technical director, went on to do Saida Garrett's Kiss of Life. Great record, by the way. Great record. So Bruce brought me on kind of as his right hand, as his technical director. And that started I was already part of the team, but this kind of solidified it. The studio is empty, and it's just me and Bruce. And Bruce and I worked on I Just Can't Stop Loving You was the first one. And Bruce really settled in and did a beautiful mix of the song without the intro. And then we cut that into the album. And then what was the next single? Was it Bad? Same thing. Bruce remixed it. And it was a slower pace. It was kind of nice. Bruce used to both Bruce and I do love good food. And for whatever reason, I started thinking about Tony Roma ribs. If you're from the west coast of the U.S., you might remember Tony Roma's. Bruce and I might get Tony Roma's ribs, or we might get Indian food or sushi or Italian. And it was a much slower pace. And we could remix the song Bad. Then we could remix The Way You Make Me Feel and Smooth and Mirror. And we would do the video mixes. We'd work with like Joe Pitka, for some of those gorgeous videos that Joe did with Michael, and do the edits for the videos. And I'm telling it a little bit out of order because a lot of the stuff we did while Michael was still in the country, obviously. But in terms of the remixing, Michael was gone. Michael was in Japan and then Australia on tour. And he really entrusted Bruce to do these remixes. So each time we did a remix, then that would be cut into the record. So there's approximately 7 or 8 versions of the Bad album that are out there, cassette, CD, and vinyl. And I don't know the difference. We didn't put markings on them that this has the new mix of Man in the Mirror. We just did it. And so we were actually in what I call post-production probably longer than it took us to actually record and mix the album the first time, if that makes sense. Now, along the way, we're also doing Moonwalker. We're doing the various music videos. We're doing radio edits and a cappella mixes and instrumental mixes. And I remember, there'd be like requests to do a special mix, I don't know, for Epic Argentina, or I'm kind of making that up, but we would have to do like special mixes for some of the international not labels, but arms of Epic Records. So we were doing remixes for a long, long time. And that's kind of when I really, really spent a lot of time with Bruce. Bruce and I got to be very close during that. And then we went on to do Dangerous and History and Quincy's Back on the Block. And, I love my OG version of the Bad album, but there's so many memories of us updating mixes on the subsequent versions of the Bad album. Now, sometimes I'll be doing a live event and somebody will say, how come, on the video of Smooth Criminal on the third chorus, the horns aren't there or something? And I'll be like, I don't know. We're only human. We did the best we could, and Bruce might have left them muted for 8 bars or something. I don't know. So there's you guys that just burrow into these mixes. I love it. I think it's fun. I just don't remember every single detail. I don't think there's a human being that possibly could. Sorry for the long answer, but Trevo, that's for you. Stay ready for fun, whoever that is. I kind of got this comment from a number of people, and I'm going to kind of do a quick synopsis. Stay ready for fun had like 3 or 4 comments talking about the movie, talking about, watching the movie Michael. He or she says the timeline is wrong. Things are and I agree. They took some liberties. They, maybe, this video happened before that song was recorded or whatever. So yeah, you're right. The movie was not chronologically perfect. I'm the first to admit that. I'll even take it a step further. My studio friends, because I'm on some forums on Facebook, kind of the old guys, that talk about recording studios, and if they go see the movie, then they'll say, "Oh man, the DBX 165 wasn't even invented, when the Jacksons were around, or when Michael started Thriller or whatever." That's true. Some of the studio shots, I probably wouldn't expect the set department, working on the film to check every single piece of equipment in a recording studio and check the date that the shot was supposed to be perpetrating. Oh, we got to take that DBX out because it wasn't invented yet. No, some of the visuals in the movie do not correlate with the actual timeline that the Jacksons would have been doing those records. Big deal, I think when they're recording Thriller, the faders that Bruce is touching are kind of like an SSL, not a Harrison. Okay, it's the wrong console. Big picture, don't get too. I get it, you guys. The chronology is important, but not all of it was perfect. So on we go. Stay Ready for Fun says he or she really learned nothing new about Michael. Here's my response to you guys, and I say this with respect to the MJ army, the MJ fans. You guys read, listen, talk, share, post, and that's great. You know so many details about Michael, way more than me. There's a family in our church. She brought her young son, and this has opened up the curtain for this young man to learn about Michael Jackson, and he's lit up. He is just like trying to learn the dances and listening to the music and searching out the videos. Well, take that times millions and millions, and there's a whole generation that didn't grow up with Michael. And to me, yeah, the movie is not chronologically perfect. And, did you learn something brand new about Michael? Maybe you didn't, but this kid did. And to me, introducing or reintroducing millions of people to Michael Jackson. And I think that's awesome. Rotten Tomatoes, Rotten Tomatoes is giving what I just looked it up. Rotten Tomatoes is giving the Michael movie a 38% from the critics and a 97% from the audience. Well, I'm always going to rely on the audience more than I am the critics. At some point, you have to kind of say, big picture, this is introducing a whole generation to the Michael Jackson that I knew and loved. Is it perfect in every degree of chronology or new info? No, but I'm willing to overlook that, and that's just my personal opinion. Mariah Lopez said, I hope there's a director's cut. I do too. There's so much footage that I've seen little snippets online. I absolutely hope there's a director's cut. And somebody commented, Brad, maybe you could have some input on that. Yeah. The answer is no. I have no input on anything like that. Deal 8280, among many other people. I made a comment last week where I said something else. Who's the young lady that's in Michael's bedroom? I didn't mean it to be like creepy or anything. I just didn't know who she was. And many people immediately pointed out, Brad, you're an idiot. That's LaToya. And I probably should have put that together. But yeah, that was the actress portraying LaToya in Michael's bedroom. And I should have picked up on that. And then we got some other nice comments. Danny asked when we're going to come back to Australia. I'm hoping that we can make it back to Australia. Maybe I can get some more New Zealand wine in 2027. But that's beside the point. We are going to be in London coming up here in mid-May. And then I've got a big event coming up in Berlin at the end of June with Brad Buxer, which I think is going to be an amazing, amazing event. So that's kind of my quick little synopsis, recapping some of the comments and then comparing the vinyls. I do have a couple more things I just want to toss at you really quick. My daughter, Maddie, works very closely with me. She does a lot of my video editing and live streams. And it's kind of, I don't want to say that she would be a newer Michael Jackson fan, but I mean, she's a generation younger than I am. So for her to watch the movie, even though she's kind of grown up with Michael in our family, it's kind of interesting to get some of her insights. So she came up with what she calls thought-provoking questions for the podcast. And I actually like that title. So she came up with 3 questions, and then I came up with a 4th. And I'm going to tell them to you, and I'm going to respond, and then I'd kind of like you to respond if you're interested. I love getting your feedback. So the first one was, John Branca tells Michael that he knows that Michael wants to be the biggest star in the world. Is that actually what Michael wanted? It's a good question. Now, some of you may have, mixed feelings about John Branca. I've only met John a few times, but he was, however you want to slice it, John was a major part of Michael's life for many, many years. Did the conversation happen exactly the way it did in the movie? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. But to Maddie's question, did Michael actually want to be the biggest star in the world? I would say absolutely yes. Michael was not, with respect, and this is just my opinion, his goal was not just to sing a few songs and maybe sell a couple records. Michael he was going hard, and he expected a lot out of himself, and he expected a lot out of his team. Michael loved the fame. He did. And, some of the things that come along with it can be challenging, but the whole King of Pop thing, I think he reveled in it, and good for him. He should. He worked hard, and he never went halfway on anything. He was all in. And I think the whole concept of being the biggest artist in the world, I say yes. I absolutely think that's, of course he was a philanthropist, and he loved giving money away and helping and connecting. But he also, I think he was driven to be the biggest artist, arguably the biggest personality on the planet. Your thoughts are welcome. Maddie's question number 2. Joe Jackson tells Michael that if he splits away from the family, he will only be surrounded by yes men. Did that end up being true? What an insightful question. That's really bright. I don't have an absolute clear answer, but I will say this. In the early years, Thriller, Bad, Dangerous, History, Michael's growing up. Michael was not surrounded by yes men. Certainly not Quincy. Certainly not Bruce. I'm going to kind of stay in my lane as much as I can. But I do think Michael people that he trusted, he did listen to. And people did not always say, oh, yes, Michael, yes, that's a great idea. Now, in the later years, maybe that changed a little bit. I don't know. I suspect maybe it did. But I think Michael did a pretty good job of putting people around him that really could help, his career, and not just say yes. So it's not a black or white question, but I to Maddie's point, I don't think I don't think once Joe left the picture, everybody just said, yes, Michael, yes, Michael, yes, Michael. Just my opinion. Third question. Do I think Michael would have liked the movie? I think it's a great question. I'm gonna cautiously, but I'm gonna say strongly cautiously say yes. I think the movie is very well shot. I think it looks good. I think Jafar looks amazing. I think Michael would flip. I think he would lose his mind if he saw Jafar dancing and performing and emulating Michael the way that he did. I think Michael would love that. Whether he would love every single scene or every single portrayal, I don't know. But I do know that Michael loved cinema. Michael loved well-produced movies. And I dare say that, he probably, I like to think, And because his family was so deeply involved, yes, I do think Michael would have liked the movie. Now, I came up with a fourth question. I saw a TikTok a couple days ago. Yes, I do like TikTok. I'm sorry. And the guy basically said, if you were alive in 1984, what in the world was that like? Because the movies, the music, the pop culture, the TV shows, 1984 was like this benchmark year of entertainment and pop culture. Now, yes, I know Thriller came out a couple years earlier, but Michael was still riding the wave in 1984. Absolutely. My question is, and it's a bit of a rhetorical question, but the world was so different in 1984 than it is in 2026. And I don't want to say it was way better, it was way worse. I mean, they both, it was literally like two different worlds. So my comment that I'm going to toss out to you is, if Michael Jackson were really ramping up in fame in 2026, and if Thriller were released in 2026, would it have anywhere near the impact that it did when it was released in the early 80s? When Thriller came out, and this is before my time, I was in high school, but when Thriller came out, it's like all the stars aligned. The music industry was kind of at a weird spot of transition. Music videos really hadn't taken hold yet, or they were just beginning. And the whole entertainment industry was cool, but it was about to really blow up, in the next couple of years. And when Thriller hit, it was just unbelievable. When Maddie and I watched the movie in Bucharest, and I've already talked about this, but that moment of the Pepsi commercial when Michael was being loaded into the ambulance, and I'm talking about in real life and in the movie, but I'm talking about in real life. Michael waved his hand with the glove on it, and there were photographers there that captured that moment, and that picture went around the world. It was devastating. It was such a moment in time, and the world is just so different. I don't know if that much of an iconic figure would or could happen again. So my question to you is, if Thriller were somehow released from an emerging artist named Michael Jackson in 2026, would it have anywhere near the same impact that it did when it was released in the early 80s? So that's what I've got. Thank you so much for hanging with me. I love hearing from you guys. We've got some really cool events coming up in London as well as Berlin, and I'm working on kind of a fun surprise in LA later in the summer. So go see the movie, keep it rolling, keep those numbers high. $219 million for an opening weekend. Unbelievable. Go buy the record. I don't know if we sell enough of them. Maybe I'll get another platinum album. Who knows? Go have a great week. God bless. And thank you for hanging out in the studio. Take care. In the Studio, the podcast is produced by Maddie Sundberg. Theme music performed by Buddy Nuanez. Artwork by Andy Healy. Studio electronics provided by Golden Age Project, and studio acoustics provided by Acoustic Sciences Corporation. My name is Brad Sundberg. Thanks so much for hanging out with us in the studio.